When did the first UFOs appear in our skies? Is humanity the creation of an alien race? And where is the scientific evidence that aliens interfere in our lives? This documentary investigation into the role of extraterrestrials in human history raises important questions that remain relevant even in the 21st century. UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, continue to be the main mystery for humanity. What are the strange objects hovering over Earth in various parts of the planet? Who is piloting them? If they are aliens, why have they come here? What interest does our planet and its inhabitants represent for beings from the stars? Many ufologists believe that the answers to these questions should be sought in our own history. According to one hypothesis, aliens became seriously interested in us immediately after the first explosion of an atomic bomb. Did the extraterrestrials decide that we pose a threat to the rest of life in the universe? And that our primitive rockets could reach other habitable worlds? This hypothesis sounds plausible. The first report of a UFO was officially recorded shortly after the testing of atomic weapons in 1945. In 1947, private pilot Kenneth Arnold flew over Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. Upon landing, he stated that during his flight he was pursued by 9 silver discs that were moving at a speed of about 2,700 kilometers per hour. Their flight resembled the gliding of a plate across the surface of water. This image appealed to reporters, and one of them coined the famous phrase, "flying saucer." Thus, Kenneth Arnold's 9 flying saucers became the first UFOs. However, strange objects in our skies were observed long before that. Thomas Ballard, an employee of the UFO Study Center, notes that in 1896, residents of California saw something resembling a UFO. In November of that year, a strange flying craft appeared in the sky over Sacramento. People saw a beam of light, and behind it was some object with something like a propeller and wings. Later, it appeared in other places as well. In April of 1897, it was seen over Minnesota, and illustrations remain depicting it as a flying ham with a headlight. And in Texas, it looked like a football with a tail and wings. For 2 years, reports of this strange object came from 1,000 different locations, and newspapers were filled with incredible illustrations depicting what was thought to be a secret invention at the time. Perhaps these ghostly ships were nothing other than our today's UFOs. If so, then we should seek their traces in the depths of history. Documents dated more than 400 years ago have caused skeptics to reconsider their position regarding UFOs. Mildred Beasley, the director of the MUFON office in the state of Utah, claims that UFOs were also observed in the 16th century, but they were regarded as signs of divine behavior, messages from God. In August 1556, enormous black spheres floated over Basel, Switzerland. In April 1561, the same thing happened in the sky over Nuremberg. The 16th and 17th centuries were a golden age of UFO sightings. Calvin said that miracles happen every day. In a drawing made in 1600, fiery spheres are depicted in the sky. They likely did not look as beautiful as the artist painted them, but the fact remains. Such things stirred the minds of people even back then. Will we manage to find the first portrait of a UFO? Has the sky over Earth always been filled with these strange objects? Descriptions of UFOs can be found in the oldest manuscripts of humanity. Take, for example, the Roman historian Livy, who described an object flying in the skies that resembled a shield. This flying shield existed 2,000 years ago. Perhaps it is the same thing that we today call a flying saucer. UFOs were observed long before the first Romans appeared. Are there older manuscripts? Most of them were of a religious nature. However, some texts abound with descriptions of aliens from the stars. One such source is the Indian epic poem Mahabharata, which recounts events that took place 1,200 years before our era. In it, one of the heroes ascends to the sky, receiving light brighter than the sun, and his voice sounds like thunderclaps. Whoever the author of these lines was, he was undoubtedly describing the launch of a spacecraft, and this happened 3,000 years ago. But this is merely an epic. Could it be that aliens left behind not only mythical drawings? Did the author of the Mahabharata really see what we today call the launch of a spacecraft? If extraterrestrials have indeed been visiting Earth for millennia, they must have left material traces of their visits, aside from legends and drawings of flying chariots. Many researchers believe that such traces can be seen on the Nazca Plain in southern Peru. If one did not know that these lines are already 2,000 years old, the plain could be mistaken for a modern airport. Corti Spiblos, the author of the book Keeper of the Skies, notes that sometimes the lines on the Nazca Plain are referred to as runways, although in reality, they are merely long straight channels carved into the desert. No aircraft could take off from there. If the Nazca lines are indeed remnants of a vast ancient spaceport, then hundreds of ships must have passed through it. Kenneth McCulloch, the author of the book Man as a Citizen of the Galaxy, adds that if the ships of that time resembled what we see today, they would not have needed runways. Perhaps Nazca served as some sort of landmarks, especially since they can only be seen from the air. If all this is true, then what did the aliens come to Earth with? And what were they flying? What were their intentions regarding the inhabitants of our planet? If UFO visits have a millennia-long history, it is quite possible that the visitors were not mere observers on Earth. Perhaps they were interested in the evolution of the human race. If so, what role did they play in our history? Numerous facts convince this map, made in 1513, astonishes with its depiction of Antarctica as a continent, a fact that became known only in the 19th century. And humanity learned about the mountains in Antarctica only in the 20th century. Is it true that the ancient geographer drew his map based on the accounts of beings who had seen our planet from space? What connection does Piri Reis's map have to the beginning of the expansion of European civilization to the West? Did aliens really seek to guide the course of human history? If so, their impact on the fate of humanity was immense. Perhaps we owe many scientific discoveries, of which humanity is proud, to them. Wendell Stevens, a retired colonel of the United States Air Force, emphasizes that if you doubt the influence of aliens on earthly civilizations, look at the remnants of the original cultures of Mexico and Central America. For example, the Yucatan Pyramid, known as El Castillo, casts a peculiar shadow on its steps twice a year on the day of the spring and autumn equinox, creating the image of a gigantic serpent sliding down the pyramid. This is Apocalcum, the god of the Maya Indians and the progenitor of life on Earth. The legend states that it was he who commanded the pyramid to be built in such a way. There are numerous questions about why the snake gods needed to erect such massive structures. For example, why does a ghostly figure of a snake appear twice a year on the steps of the pyramid? This pyramid, it is claimed, serves as a calendar calculated for 365 and a quarter days. The Maya had no other calendars, and all agricultural work was conducted according to this one. Some researchers suggest that someone taught them to calculate the timing of sowing and harvesting. If the legends are not lying, and this gigantic pyramid was a gift from the gods, then the celestial race truly cared about the survival and prosperity of the local tribes. Interestingly, around 600 years before our era, the Maya abandoned their cities and moved north with no war or famine. They simply packed up and left as if someone had ordered them to do so. Ufologists believe that having nurtured the local tribes, the aliens sent them to spread knowledge throughout Central America. However, it is possible that the Maya created their astonishing civilization without outside help. It is worth remembering that every primitive culture has legends of contact with deities and the assistance they received. For example, the bas reliefs in some Mexican temples explain how this culture originated and how it developed. Some images bear a striking resemblance to modern astronauts, but this may just be coincidence. Nevertheless, how can one explain the fact that many researchers believe this figure depicts Kukulkan descending from the heavens to provide the people with a calendar and other knowledge? Despite this, scholars are not certain that all these artifacts truly testify to contacts between humans and extraterrestrials. Some argue that these so-called evidences were fabricated by civilizations too similar to our own, with its rockets, runways, and spacesuits. All of this closely resembles modern technology. If aliens truly visited us on rockets similar to ours, then their homeland must be located nearby. Zecharia Sitchin, the author of the Earth Chronicles, expresses the opinion that aliens from distant stars are unlikely to have been able to reach us. It is a different matter if they live somewhere nearby, but if so, then where exactly? Perhaps on one of the neighboring planets. We do not know much about them. For centuries, there have been people who believed in the habitability of the planets in the solar system. Many still associate UFOs with Mars or Venus. However, recent studies have shown that the conditions on these planets are unfavorable for the emergence of complex organic life. The idea of aliens from neighboring planets today seems absurd, but is this really the case? Zecharia Sitchin studied for many years the hypothesis of the origin of aliens from our planetary system. He believes that the key to most of the mysteries of UFOs lies in the history of the Sumerian civilization. The Sumerian state emerged 6,000 years ago on the territory of modern Iran and became the foundation for all the great civilizations of Earth, including the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and modern peoples. All key aspects of modern civilization were already present among the Sumerians: writing and mathematics, the wheel and pottery, bricks and multi-story buildings, government and law, astronomy, and much more. To reach such a level, other cultures required centuries, while the Sumerian civilization appeared overnight, as if it had fallen from the sky. Millennia before the telescope was invented, the Sumerians had a profound understanding of the structure of the solar system. But where did they acquire such knowledge? The Sumerians possessed astonishing knowledge in the field of astronomy. They knew all the planets known to us and described them well. According to school curricula, Copernicus discovered the rotation of the planets around the Sun in 1543. However, the Sumerians knew about this 5,500 years ago. In their texts, they referred to Uranus and Neptune as the blue-green twins. In modern science, these planets were little known, and only in 1986, after the launch of the Voyager spacecraft, was it possible to establish that they indeed are blue and green twins, as described in Sumerian texts. So what was this? Perhaps it was a lucky coincidence of a Sumerian author or information obtained from a being observing Uranus and Neptune. Could it be that we have finally found the first UFO? The Sumerian texts mention that all their knowledge was received from the Anunnaki, which translates as those who came down from the heavens to earth. But where did the Anunnaki come from? Perhaps this was known to the Sumerians. The chronicles of ancient Sumer describe a planet so distant from the other planets of the solar system that its annual cycle of orbit around the Sun is 3,500 years. This planet is called Nibiru, and it is from there, it is assumed, that the Anunnaki arrived. If this is so, it becomes clear why the inhabitants of the mysterious planet, referred to by modern astronomers as Planet X, visit us so rarely. Their spaceships are not powerful enough and can only reach Earth during the time of opposition. According to the researchers' opinion, on the planet Nibiru, the Anunnaki could have arrived in spaceships that are not much different from our weak rockets. If the mythological Sumerian planet exists in reality, then how often have we encountered its inhabitants? Based on his calculations, the history of humanity knows periods of stagnation and moments of breakthrough that alternate at equal intervals of time, approximately every 3,600 Earth years. He believes that this time frame most closely corresponds to the pattern of successes of Earth's civilization, successes that we owe to the aliens from the constellations. Thus, the stages of development of Earth's civilization may have been provoked by extraterrestrials, and you and I are merely guinea pigs in an intergalactic experiment. Why would aliens care about the prosperous development of our race? And could it be that there is some kind of intergalactic kinship that connects them with us? Even if one agrees that the cosmic wanderers who visited Earth for thousands of years were our neighbors in the solar system, the question inevitably arises: why did our guests try to influence the development of civilization among Earthlings, and what was their goal? Perhaps this ancient planetary race supported us in our struggle for survival. Maybe that was their main goal, to raise us just as we raise our children. Perhaps it was they who sowed our Earth with their seeds, and perhaps you and I are merely their children. If that is the case, then we have found the very first UFO of humanity, the very craft that brought us from Mars to Earth. This version is almost entirely confirmed by sacred human tradition, namely the Bible. In the 6th chapter of Genesis, it is told how certain Nephilim took for themselves the daughters of humans and they bore them offspring, mighty heroes such as cannot be found in our time. Perhaps all of the above refers to those whom the ancient measures called the Anunnaki, and these very Anunnaki became the ancestors of Earthlings? The gathered information looks very convincing. Most likely we are descendants of marital unions between extraterrestrials and Earthlings. According to ancient sources, the women of the Nephilim directly descended from Adam, who, in turn, came into being as a result of the creativity of ancient geneticists. Look at this. This is DNA. Could it be that the ancient Sumerians understood genetics? Only a few decades ago, humanity managed to find the key to unraveling ancient nature, the genetic formula of DNA. However, the ancient Sumerians described reproduction through DNA already 5,000 years ago. This process was governed by the Anunnaki. They were also responsible for creating a new species of earthly apes, Homo sapiens. Is the riddle of Enki really so simple to solve? Could it be that the first visitors to the Earth planet were our ancestors? Yes, our genetic structure is somewhat similar. Overall, Earthlings were made in their image and likeness. If so, it becomes clear why ancient depictions of extraterrestrials from the stars closely resemble Earthlings. Did we, in the pursuit of the first UFO, catch ourselves? The religious veneration of UFOs that developed in America reflects the myth of the creation of the Earth. These omnipotent beings, who some believe guide our development, resemble Zeus and other heroes of ancient mythology. Thus, aliens become the latest achievement of human myth-making. However, are there real pieces of evidence? Who knows? Perhaps our distant ancestors are indeed watching over us from space. There is currently no answer to this question, at least not in the UFO diaries. Thousands of witnesses swear they have seen aliens, but do we know what they actually look like? Is it true that the United States government is hiding the bodies of deceased extraterrestrials from us? What are the guests from space searching for on our planet? The main question of ufology can be formulated as follows. If we are indeed being visited by aliens, then who are they? Friends or foes? More and more people believe in the visitation of Earth by aliens, and this belief is based on concrete facts, ranging from observations of UFO flights to accounts of direct contact with extraterrestrial beings. But if these beings are indeed visiting us, what do we know about them? If they are interfering in our lives, why do we still not know their true intentions? Ufologists have been investigating this mystery since 1947, when pilot Kenneth Arnold observed a group of strange flying objects that he described as flying saucers. Since then, similar phenomena have been witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people, and each has posed the same question: who built these ships and why did they come here? In the summer of that same year, an event occurred that, according to ufologists, could provide a definitive answer to all questions about flying saucers. In July 1947, an unidentified extraterrestrial spacecraft crashed in the state of New Mexico. According to eyewitnesses, it could not have been manufactured on Earth. The military has taken possession of the wreckage of the craft and the bodies of the aliens. If this is true, our government is hiding this event from the world public. But why? Why should the government conceal the fact that extraterrestrials have visited Earth? Perhaps, in reality, it is not hiding anything at all. Carl and Turner, the authors of the book Those Who Have Been Beyond, assert that if you doubt the involvement of our government in the UFO issue, it is enough to familiarize yourself with any book based on real documents. These documents, in and of themselves, incriminate the government. But if this information is guarded, who then acts as the guardians? Robert Dean, a researcher and analyst, speaks of the existence of a structure known as MJ-12, created in the late 1940s to study UFOs and our reaction to their appearance. This organization monitors how we perceive alien ships in our sky. Such a structure exists today as well, albeit under a different name. It is an international intergovernmental organization whose goal is to control information about UFOs. Vicki Cooper Ecker, the editor of the UFO magazine, believes that the government and NASA have many reasons to conceal information about UFOs. The main one is the report from the Brookings Institution, made in 1961. NASA commissioned this think tank in Washington to calculate what would happen if Earthlings discovered an extraterrestrial object or encountered the aliens themselves. Kevin Randle, the author of the book The History of UFO Crashes, refers to the report from the Brookings Institution which states that humanity's conquest of space could lead to an encounter with alien intelligence. According to the authors of the report, such an encounter would inevitably lead to chaos in our world. A highly developed civilization, when faced with less developed ones, automatically absorbs them, which could lead to the extinction of the institutions of religion and power. It is evident that rulers do not want to allow this and are making every effort to conceal information about extraterrestrials. Randall shares his experience when, "What did I find in the field? It was a weather balloon." He emphasizes that lies and cover-ups contradict the Constitution, and therefore he speaks openly, even violating the oath of secrecy regarding state secrets. He poses the question, is this true? Is the government hiding the true nature of aliens from us? Perhaps it simply does not want us to know that we are not alone in the universe. Randall believes that people need to gradually get used to the idea that we are not the only intelligent beings. He claims that this knowledge can change the life of every inhabitant of Earth, and therefore it is important for people to learn the truth that the government is hiding. Ufologists note that attempts to suppress information have not always been successful. Hundreds of eyewitnesses recount their observations of UFOs and contacts with aliens. These testimonies may help uncover the truth that representatives of MJ-12 are carefully concealing. According to Randall, UFO devices are made from materials that do not exist on Earth. Ships that undertake interstellar journeys must withstand extreme stresses and harsh radiation. Eyewitness descriptions indicate that the remains found in June 1947 in the state of New Mexico appeared thin and fragile, yet they could not be cut, bent, or damaged. No material made on Earth possesses such wonderful properties, he asserts. Randall also expresses the opinion that some of the aliens we contact may come from other dimensions. This idea instills fear in many, as the thought that aliens from other dimensions may have malicious intentions is frightening. The ability of extraterrestrials to seep through solid objects in our world causes concern among modern scientists. However, do other dimensions exist in reality? Or is this merely a figment of ufologists' imagination? This concept completely overturns our understanding of Newtonian and Einsteinian physics. If UFOs are indeed creations of a highly advanced civilization, then what are they seeking in our relatively primitive world? Randall questions how truthful the accounts of eyewitnesses are who claim to have seen aliens. If they truly saw extraterrestrials, what purpose did they come to Earth for? Perhaps these visitors from different planets have different objectives. Answers to these questions, in his opinion, are recorded in the pages of the Analon Diaries. Many ufologists assert that the United States government has been hiding irrefutable evidence of the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations for over half a century. But could it be that reports of encounters with aliens are merely fabrications or hallucinations? While doubts may exist, there are thousands of such reports recorded from the words of trustworthy individuals. Linda Moulton Howe, a writer and producer, shares her experience. "We studied and compared these drawings for a long time. It turned out that residents of California depict aliens in the same way as residents of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. All these people have never heard of each other." She wonders, why do they draw the same thing? This creates a sense that some common features of aliens are imprinted in the minds of people, like advertisements for well-known brands. However, descriptions of aliens do not always match even among the most reliable witnesses. Wendell Stevens, a retired colonel of the United States Air Force, emphasizes that aliens cannot be viewed as a single entity. He argues that we are visited by various beings with diverse purposes and behaviors. Personally, I have encountered aliens in two forms, but from my experience working with other witnesses, I know that there are actually many more such forms, shares her experience one of the witnesses. She describes beings that look half human and half alien, and also mentions reptiles with vertically oriented pupils. As for me personally, I have seen insect-like creatures, something resembling a praying mantis, she adds. Among other types reported by witnesses, there are beings nearly 2.5 meters tall, with very pale skin and no hair. They vaguely resemble humans, says the witness, emphasizing that no one knows how many such types actually exist. Maybe dozens, maybe more, she ponders. Such diversity in descriptions of aliens raises two main hypotheses. Either we are indeed visited by aliens from different worlds, or the witnesses are simply telling different stories. If all witnesses describe the same features, it would be more likely to be true, she concludes. Bud Hopkins, a researcher of the abduction phenomenon, notes that despite the discrepancies, 85% of the descriptions match on key parameters. He mentions that most witnesses describe small gray beings about 1 to 2 meters tall, sometimes a little shorter or taller. If most witnesses give a similar description of aliens, can we create a portrait of the races of aliens that most frequently visit Earth? Hopkins wonders. He describes them. They have huge heads without hair, without noses and ears, with a slit instead of a mouth, a very thin pointed chin, small bodies, and thin limbs. Hopkins also notes that they have very thin necks, and people wonder how their heads stay on them. The eyes can be black around, and sometimes they are just huge black eyes. Sometimes the eyes are very slanted, sometimes they are positioned strictly horizontally, he adds, emphasizing that opinions vary. Dr. David Jacobs, a researcher of the abduction phenomenon, confirms they have 2 legs, 2 arms, and 2 eyes. That is, the minimum necessary for an organism to survive. There is also physical evidence supporting these oral testimonies. Ufologist Leonard Stringfield conducted special investigations into cases of UFO crashes and the autopsies of crew bodies. Ufologists claim that videos sent to them from the federal government were sent to Stringfield with classified materials, he recounts. In one of the folders was an official report on the autopsy of the remains of the crew of a crashed flying saucer. Stringfield, who died in 1994, recorded his account of this event on video shortly before his death. The alien was dead. It had a very large head by our standards. It had no hair, no earlobes, and no nose, Stringfield recalls. Its mouth resembled a slit about 2.5 centimeters long. But what do we know about aliens aside from their appearance? Why do they visit Earth? What are their goals? Maybe the authorities fear an attack from their side, wonders one of the researchers. Can ordinary people somehow influence the situation? What needs to be done to learn about the intentions of the extraterrestrials? The mystery of aliens from other worlds does not give peace to people around the globe. Ufologists assert that the United States government deliberately hides the truth about extraterrestrials. But maybe the latter themselves do not really want us to know everything about them, reflects one of the witnesses. According to eyewitness testimonies, the gray beings never speak about the purpose of their visits to our planet. Here's what one boy told me. During the conversation, they do not move their lips. One of them said that he hears all my thoughts. The existence of aliens may be connected to their telepathic abilities. Perhaps words are not needed to convey the purposes of their visits. This is especially relevant for those who claim to have been abducted by extraterrestrial beings. The abduction phenomenon remains one of the main mysteries. Many of these people sincerely believe in their correctness. They truly assert that they have been abducted, but the question arises why? If this is true, then numerous abductions of people occur annually in various corners of the world. On board their ships, aliens reportedly conduct medical examinations. Perhaps this explains the true nature of their intentions. There is an opinion that extraterrestrial researchers collect material for their studies without considering the mental state of their captives. This is reminiscent of the actions of earthly scientists who catch monkeys, insert rings into their ears, and then observe their behavior. Do aliens study us in the same way we study our closest relatives? Or is there something else behind this? Many ufologists believe that the goals of the aliens surpass our understanding and go beyond the bounds of scientific time. What interest could humanity hold for a highly advanced race? Perhaps humans interest them as a source of genetic materials. There are claims that sperm and egg cells are taken from people, but why do aliens need genetic materials? Some researchers, including myself, have concluded that humanity is a hybrid race. Perhaps we were created specifically for our planet. I believe that our genetic program has varied since the very beginning of civilization and continues to change even today. This raises the question, are the aliens conducting genetic experiments on Earth? Does this mean that the human race was artificially created by extraterrestrials for some unknown purpose? To find answers to these questions, we met with people who claim to have been forcibly taken aboard UFOs and participated in experiments to create a hybrid race of half-human, half-alien beings. Is this true? Despite various opinions, such cases occur quite frequently. The creation of a hybrid race seems to be the main goal of all abductions, although we do not yet know why this is necessary. There is another side to this hybridization project. Recently, aliens have begun to create beings almost indistinguishable from ordinary humans. If they can take egg cells from women, fertilize them, and grow embryos within themselves, thus producing hybrids, then they can do the same with an already fertilized human egg cell, from which a fully human child will develop. This child will be raised among the aliens, but will outwardly resemble a human completely. Former intelligence officer Robert Dean claims that he had the opportunity to see secret documents stating that our military dealt with 4 alien races, one of which was indistinguishable from humans. All 4 races were humanoid, but only one of them resembled a human completely. This thought amused Dina, for just imagine how it must infuriate the generals to sit next to these superhumans in an airplane, restaurant, or theater and not even suspect who your neighbors truly are. And what about other types of aliens? How are they connected to the program of the little gray beings? In some cases, contactees encounter extraterrestrials that appear as reptilian or insectoid creatures. The problem is that both types appear in the company of gray aliens. Thus, all these beings seem to work together, and we cannot accurately say what the unconventional types of aliens represent. But perhaps the situation is not so bad, and humanity is not a test subject in the genetic experiments of extraterrestrials. Maybe the aliens have entirely friendly intentions? We absolutely do not know why they come here, to help or to harm. We have no reason to believe that they wish us ill, that they are killing us or unscrewing the wheels from our cars. We only know that we are needed for some reason. One of the researchers insists that at this moment they are interested in collecting some kind of living material. They collect it as we harvest crops from the fields, she says. We are to them some kind of whole product. They take our flesh, our emotions, energy, and give nothing in return. So this is a one-way street. She continues that we have encountered things that we cannot comprehend at this level of development. It is easiest to assume that behind the camouflage and various tricks lies something terrible, she adds. If we stop our research, the most important event of the next 5 years may not happen. In recent years, a mass of information about UFOs has fallen upon humanity, and according to her, we know almost everything about this phenomenon. She is confident that we are already close to unraveling it. In the coming years, we will not only learn everything about the true nature of the aliens, but also solve the riddle of Inallu as a whole, she asserts. No matter how you feel about this issue, you should not be afraid. Humanity represents a single and indivisible whole as a race and as a civilization, and this will help it survive. Meanwhile, contactees agree in their descriptions of the aliens, while official documents indicate that the UFO phenomenon is under the control of some international structure. Will we learn the truth about the aliens from Nefmers, she wonders. People hiding behind the old doors of government institutions or the aliens themselves can answer this question. Either way, the truth about extraterrestrials will remain a secret behind 7 seals on the pages of UFO diaries. On the evening of the 2nd of July, 1947, the peaceful life of the small town of Roswell in the state of New Mexico came to an end. Witnesses claimed to have seen the crash of a flying saucer. Around it lay 4 beings ranging in height from 90 centimeters to 120 centimeters. The military immediately cordoned off the crash area, took the craft and the bodies, and at a press conference stated that it was a weather balloon. However, ufologists assert that it was actually a crashed alien spacecraft. What happened that evening? Today on the program, UFO Diaries, we will tell you about the mystery of Roswell. One of the most mysterious pages of the UFO Diaries is the incident in Roswell. For nearly 50 years, ufologists have been trying to break the veil of secrecy surrounding this event. Can we believe their claims that in July 1947, near Roswell, a flying saucer and alien spacecraft crashed, and that the United States government has kept this event a secret for almost half a century? If this is true, what happened to the pilots of the crashed ship? Does the government know about the fallen craft? And if so, why does it remain silent about it? Captain Kevin Randle, who has dedicated his life to seeking the truth about Roswell, has written several books on the subject. As is customary according to the laws of the genre, our story began on a summer stormy night in 1947, he says. In early July 1947, a farmer named Mac Brazel was spending the night alone on his ranch. He thought that one of the thunderclaps sounded too loud and somehow unusual, but at the time he did not pay it any mind. In the morning he went to inspect the fields, wishing to drive his cattle to where there was more rain. Upon approaching another pasture, he discovered a huge amount of metallic debris. Randall and his colleagues assert that, judging by Mac Brazel's descriptions, no earthly machine could have shattered into such incredible fragments. Mac Brazel decided to report what had happened to the local authorities and headed to the nearest town, Roswell, New Mexico. At that time, the sheriff of Roswell was George Wilcox. His granddaughter, Barbara Dagger, recalls, in the late 40s, not far from Roswell, a spacecraft, which is also called a flying saucer, crashed. My grandfather went to see what had happened. Arriving at the site, he saw a large scorched patch, and then the wreckage. Later, I asked my mom if Grandpa had seen any aliens from space. She replied that yes, there were 4 of them. Sheriff Wilcox contacted the nearest United States Air Force base and reported the strange debris on Brazel's pasture. Within an hour, military personnel arrived at the scene, who did not quite believe Wilcox's account. The field strewn with debris looked plausible, but 4 aliens seemed more like a fantasy. The subsequent events can be characterized as either a military blunder or the largest deception in the history of the United States Air Force. Colonel Blenchart ordered Major Jesse Marcel of the Special Section of the 509th Bomber Squadron to inspect the crash site of the object. According to Marcel, he examined an area just over 1 kilometer in length and 270 meters in width, littered with metallic fragments. Based on his report, the commander of the 509th Squadron, Colonel Blenchart, ordered Lieutenant Walter Gott to prepare a press release describing the captured flying saucer. Walter Gott prepared the press release and sent it to local newspapers and radio, from where the information spread across the country. The press release stated, "Yesterday, the numerous rumors about flying saucers were finally confirmed. An officer of the Special Section of the 509th Bomber Squadron of the United States Air Force, stationed in Roswell, managed to capture a flying disc with the help of local residents." However, this statement did not mention a word about the aliens that Wilcox had talked about. What was it? A grand hoax or a deliberate concealment of facts? Barbara Dagger recalls that her grandmother still fears what happened 40 years ago. "They forbade us to talk about it. Grandma said that after the incident, military police came to them. These people said that if even a single word, even a hint leaked out of this house, they would kill not only them but the entire family. No one would survive. If the military openly admitted to capturing a flying saucer, then why did they need to silence the local sheriff and his family?" Bill Brazel, the son of the late Mac, also claims that his father swore to remain silent. Silent about what, he wonders. Perhaps he found not only strange debris on his field, but something else as well. The incident in Roswell is not just a mystery, but a whole series of strange enigmas intertwined with one another. If Colonel Blenchart acknowledged that he had nearly a whole flying saucer at his disposal, then they found not just scattered metal debris in the field of Mac Brazel. According to those who were in Roswell at the time, this backwater town in the southern United States became the focus of the entire planet's attention. But then something even more mysterious happened. A few hours later, the official version was changed. The commander of the 8th Army of the United States Air Force, General Roger Ramey, under whose command was the 509th Squadron, issued a new press release stating that an ordinary weather balloon had crashed in Roswell. According to the general, this device fell on Brazel's ranch, and Major Marcel, not understanding the situation, hastily declared it a flying saucer. Could this photograph be an ordinary forgery? To the right, the voice of Brigadier General Thomas Dubose, now retired, can be heard sharing his opinion on the official version of the United States Air Force regarding the weather balloon crash. He claims that everyone knew this version was just a cover-up. I have no idea who made it up. But this is the story we fed to the press, he says with evident dissatisfaction. The general continues that representatives of the United States military insisted on the weather balloon debris, although all senior officers knew it was a lie. He suggests that even if Mac Brazel did indeed find a weather balloon, it contradicts the testimonies of other witnesses and the nature of the debris. Recently, the son of Major Marcel made a stunning statement about what he saw in his childhood. Major Marcel brought home a couple of pieces of debris to show his wife and son, and then he took them back to the Roswell military base, says Jazz Marcel Jr. He describes how these strange things were unlike anything I had ever seen, primarily because they had some kind of markings on them. There was something resembling ribs, and they were covered with some kind of writing. Jazz recalls thinking at the time that these were hieroglyphs, but later realized they were more geometric shapes and symbols. Although the weather balloon version seemed to put a period on the incident in Roswell, new revelations soon emerged. The Roswell incident continues to spark debate for 40 years. One of the reasons for this is the account of Greedy Barnett, an engineer who lived in Roswell at the time. He told his friend Vern Malty about what happened on that July day. Barnett told me that while returning from a walk in the fields, he stumbled upon a flying saucer with an open hatch, and next to it lay 4 strange creatures, recalls Vern Malta. Gritty Barnett claims that he saw a crashed flying saucer and its 4 pilots lying on the grass. Could it be that this was the craft the military later mentioned in their press release? Ponders the narrator. However, if Barnett's flying saucer was hardly damaged, then where did the numerous debris mentioned by Mac Brazel come from? There is another mystery in this story. Barnett stated that all the aliens were dead, but Sheriff George Wilcox was not so sure. My grandfather said they had large heads, and they were dressed in something like spacesuits made of very thin silk, he shares. I asked him if they were dead or alive. He said it seems one of them was alive. Perhaps in Roswell, not 1 but 2 UFOs crashed, and each ship had 4 pilots. Many ufologists believe that this is exactly how it happened. Witnesses claim that the debris found in the field was very small, indicating a complete destruction of the aircraft. The testimonies of other participants in this story suggest that the solution to all the mysteries and discrepancies was located just a few kilometers from Brazel's ranch, much closer to Roswell. The object in question was created in 1925 and made from some super strong material so that it could have been destroyed by some extraterrestrial force. Speaking of the debris found on Mike Brazel's ranch, it should be noted that it consisted of a material clearly unknown to humans. No one could even approximately determine what this material was, emphasizes the narrator. What resembled foil was impossible to cut, and what looked like wood did not burn and was impervious to insects. This indicates a material that could not have existed in 1947. But is it possible that the fragments ended up on Brazel's ranch naturally? Could they simply be meteorites? Dr. Richard Moon, an expert on ecological issues, explains. Meteorites enter the Earth's atmosphere at very high speeds. As a result of friction, they change course, begin to burn, and decrease in size. But what is most important? If extraterrestrial objects truly reach the surface of the planet, they leave behind giant craters, similar to the crater in Arizona. However, the object that fell in New Mexico left no crater at all. At the scene of the incident, there was only a small dent, which resembled the aftermath of an emergency landing more than a thoughtless dive from orbit. Some believe that something unusual had been found at the Brazel Ranch. In the late 1940s, the former Soviet Union closely monitored the tests of American nuclear weapons, conducted just hundreds of kilometers from Roswell. It is logical to assume that this was where a spy plane could have headed. However, in 1947, the Soviets did not undertake anything of the sort. Based on the Freedom of Information Act, all instances of Soviet aircraft entering American airspace that year were checked. It turned out that no Soviet aircraft even came close to the shores of the United States. However, recent studies by Folge showed that the incident in Roswell did not leave the Soviet authorities indifferent. George Knapp, a journalist, upon returning from Russia, discovered that the Russians were following everything related to Roswell with great interest. Moreover, they came to astonishing conclusions. Knapp met a scientist who had previously worked with Sergei Korolev, the father of Soviet rocketry. Korolev told him about his meeting with Joseph Stalin, who in the late 1940s exhibited a mad interest in UFOs and wanted to know everything about Roswell. This city became a target for Russian intelligence, as American military technologies were tested there. Stalin was interested in the incident in Roswell, and he ordered all facts about this story to be gathered. Russian scientists concluded that something indeed crashed in Roswell, and it was clearly not a weather balloon. They could not say for certain where this craft came from, but they were sure that it was neither their satellite nor an American one. In their opinion, it was an object of extraterrestrial origin. Nevertheless, the main figure in this story remained Mac Brazel, the man from whom it all began. He found himself a prisoner of his own ranch, and the military seriously feared that he might accidentally disclose information. Events in Roswell took a new turn when, according to eyewitnesses, Brazel escaped from the military and found refuge with friends. One of them, Judd Roberts, a former manager of a local radio station, hid him in his home. Roberts recalls, "We found a place where he could hide from the curious and at least get some sleep for the night." They planned to air an interview with Brazel, but according to Roberts, they received several calls from Washington urging them not to do so. "We were warned that if we did not want to lose our license, it would be better for us to forget about this interview. Otherwise, it would not take even a day before we would say goodbye to the radio business forever." Is this really true? Did the military really use such dirty methods to silence Brazel? And if so, what exactly about? He was literally confined on the base, held in custody in a special department. It was not a prison, but it was little different from one. On the evening of July 9th, the military held a press conference in Roswell. There, Brazel said something completely different than on July 6th, stating absolutely opposite things. "What did I find in the field? It was a weather balloon." But how could that be? What weather balloon? Come on, that's nonsense. What happened to Brazel during his detention on the base? Why did he change his testimony? Perhaps the military did not want Glenn Dennis to tell journalists the same story as the pathologist. In 1947, he worked at the Ballard Funeral Home, and that year he had to transport accident victims to the base more than once. On one of those days, while on the hospital grounds, he saw metal debris piled up. This debris was found on Brazel's ranch. Glenn Dennis, a former pathologist, recalled how he approached the scene and asked, "Looks like you have an accident?" He saw the wreckage in the backyard, and that was when his serious problems began. "Sorry, sir, this is private property," they replied to him. "If you want to live, forget what you saw," the guards added, openly threatening him. However, Dennis's acquaintance with the events in Roswell did not end there. He was about to learn more about his girlfriend, a nurse working in the hospital on the military base. She was a lieutenant, young and very religious, raised in strict Catholic traditions. One day, while entering the anatomy room for materials, she encountered two doctors who were examining bodies, but these were not human bodies. She described that two of them were severely mutilated. After that, she felt uncomfortable and decided to return to the base. "I never saw her again," Dennis recalled. The next day, he called the hospital to inquire about her condition, but he was told that she had been urgently transferred and no one knew where. Since then, she had not been on the base. What happened to the nurse who accidentally peeked into the anatomy room on that fateful day? Did she have to dissect the bodies that Sheriff Wilcox spoke of? And if so, what connection did these bodies have to the debris found by Mac Brazel? Unfortunately, the answers to these questions only complicated the mystery of Roswell. If there were indeed two flying saucers or two halves of the same one, then the question arises, where did all this massive evidence go? And what happened to the alien spacecraft pilots discovered at the crash site? Sappo Henderson, a base worker, claims to know the answer to this question. He said that if it has already been printed in the newspapers, then it is no longer a secret. He bought a couple of newspapers and brought them to Dennis in the car. "Here, read," he suggested. When Dennis read, Henderson added, It's all pure truth. I personally transported the crashed saucer to Dayton, Ohio. Thus, the physical evidence of extraterrestrial life was transported to Dayton and forever hidden from the public. But how can we prove that all this really happened? Perhaps the evidence is hidden where ordinary people will never be able to find it. One thing is certain. The government took all the evidence, cordoned off the crash site, collected the craft and the bodies, leaving not a single grain of sand. From reliable sources, it became known that the spacecraft and bodies were first placed in Hangar 84 at the local U.S. Air Force Base, and then transported in parts to other bases. A nurse, a friend of Glenn Dennis, saw 3 bodies in the morgue, confirming that at least 3 aliens were on the base at that time. Many people, unfamiliar with each other, tell the same story, but from different perspectives. It begins with Mac Brazel, who found the debris, and ends with Major Edwin Easley, who was heading to the crash site. If this story were a hoax, the testimonies of these 2 people would not match so perfectly. The mystery of the incident in Roswell will never be fully explained unless new evidence can break the half-century veil of silence erected through the most brutal methods and techniques. Can we hope that this wall will someday fall, and the government will reveal to us the whole truth about the incident in Roswell? Under pressure from his constituents, Congressman from New Mexico Stephen Schiff turned to the U.S. Department of Defense for an official clarification of the events of July 1947. In March 1993, he attempted to breach the wall of secrecy surrounding the events in Roswell. The response came from a colonel who, referring to the fact that the documents from that period are stored in the National Archives, advised the congressman to go directly there. The search for archives turned into yet another mystery. In the end, Schiff received a response from the National Archives, where he was informed that they had no information regarding the events in Roswell. Thus, the Department of Defense believed that no incident in Roswell had ever occurred. Questions remained. Why were there no recorded testimonies from eyewitnesses? Where was the report on the military operation on private property? The folders of the Blue Book contained nothing about Roswell, except for one paragraph from a local newspaper, filed for another reason. Congressman Schiff received no answer to his question from either the military or the custodians of our history. But what about the threats, blackmail, and silencing? Does the government really think we will continue to believe in this fairy tale about the media's aunt? For those who witnessed with their own eyes what happened in Roswell, the beginning of July 1947 will forever remain a memorable date. But until new evidence emerges, the mystery of Roswell will remain one of the unsolved enigmas in the pages of UFO diaries. White pins have appeared on the map of the United States. If you find yourself beyond this fence without the authorities' permission, you will sign your own death warrant. It is suspected that a secret flying saucer airfield is located here. Let us hope that photographs taken from Russian satellites will document the account of a man who calls himself the first mechanic of UFOs on Earth. Before accusing the government of secret collaboration with extraterrestrials, we will attempt to penetrate the restricted water area. Today, the object of our investigation will be Area 51. To participate in Star Wars, it is not necessary to have a spaceship. One can simply head to a desolate corner of the state of Nevada, known as Area 51. According to eyewitness accounts, there, in the basin of the vanished Lake Groom Lake, work continues day and night on the fantastic project of the century. Geographic maps claim that no base exists in those parts, yet flying saucers regularly hover over its territory. Glenn Campbell, the project leader of Area 51, notes that after the sensational story involving Robert Lazar, entire caravans of UFO hunters have flocked here. Lazar, a former government employee, reported that from 1988 to 1989 he worked at a highly classified facility near Groom Lake. He recalls, "After I got the job, I was flown from Las Vegas to Area 51. Then I was transported 25 kilometers south along a non-dry lake consisting of 9 hangars located right in the rock at an angle of 60 degrees to the horizon line. All of them are excellently camouflaged." Lazar claims that there he worked on the creation of disc-shaped flying vehicles using alien technologies. Studying the theoretical foundations of Pinky technologies, the researcher noted that they were visually demonstrated and looked quite convincing. According to him, He worked on one of several flying saucers assigned to the S4 area. At first, he thought it was a typical high-speed machine, although it seemed quite large, 5 meters in height and 8 meters in diameter. In the central compartment were control consoles and 2 very small seats, barely suitable for a child. This drawing was made based on the words of Bob Lazar. If this is not fantasy, then it represents compelling evidence of visits to Earth by an intelligence different from human. But how did the United States government manage to acquire several flying saucers and keep this secret under wraps for almost half a century? If rumors are spreading anyway, why not make an official statement and ease the strict secrecy? In September 1993, 1,600 hectares of desert land in the state of Nevada, part of the military complex Millie's Range, were placed under the control of the United States Air Force. For the last few years, Glenn Campbell has been trying to debunk the myth of Area 51. This area is just a patch of land in the complex of secret facilities of the Nellis Range military base, scattered across the desert. Until the early 1980s, one could drive up to the foothills of the Ikram Lake Valley and admire the military architecture, albeit from a distance. The mountains were cordoned off only in the mid-1980s to curb the curiosity of Soviet spies. At that time, the base disappeared from geographical maps, becoming a small secret of the American government. What military secret is surrounded by such strict security measures? Does anyone know what is inside? Retired Colonel Wendell Stevens, who served many years in the United States Air Force, stated that reconnaissance aircraft of the U-2 type, Blackbird, and stealth fighter flew out of Area 51, the existence of which many were even unaware. He wonders why the authorities apply lethal weapons against ordinary enthusiasts who enjoy watching airplanes. Aircraft that stray into the zone encounter surface-to-air missiles. Stevens recalls how an armed-to-the-teeth helicopter chased after them. A fighter jet flew out to meet him, or it was simply shot down. He questions whether this seems like a countermeasure that has gone too far. What will happen if someone dares to cross the boundary of this zone? One thing is clear, with Area 51 there are no jokes, and a weekend spent in the picturesque spot of Groom Lake could cost you your life. You would become someone who knows too much. When asked what is happening here, the guard replies, "Sorry, the road is closed. You cannot go here." One must not ask unnecessary questions, as they are ready to do anything to keep people away from these places. Norio Hayakawa, the manager of the Civil Investigations Agency, experienced the effects of the strict laws of Area 51 firsthand. In 1991, he brought a group of journalists from Southern California to observe the maneuvers of unidentified objects. Suddenly, their caravan of blue cars was attacked by an unmarked helicopter that hovered 3 meters above them. Hayakawa wonders if he knew the consequences of civilians intruding on military property. He claims that they did not violate the boundaries of the military zone while being on public territory. If the military is willing to use machine guns 15 kilometers away from the secret part, why do they not use the simplest method of aerial surveillance? Retired Colonel Wendell Stevens disagrees with this viewpoint. He asserts that flights over the Nellis Range complex are strictly limited. Even during combat exercises, pilots are prohibited from flying over this zone. Just brushing a wing against the invisible boundary means goodbye to an aviation career. The lost navigator is ordered to return and given the route for the shortest exit from the zone. The most desperate violators of Groom Lake's airspace are expelled with the help of interceptors. Civilian pilots who find themselves in this restricted area automatically lose their rights, and some are simply shot down. George Schnapp, a journalist, notes that for 40 years, secret tests and insane military projects have been conducted here. Nature has provided this place with a separate testing ground, a desert surrounded by mountains. Aircraft that get lost here face surface-to-air missiles. In the soil, detectors have been installed that respond to the presence of a person, while surveillance cameras placed everywhere complete the picture of heightened vigilance of the local hosts. These security measures become necessary when it comes to strategically significant sites where high-precision weapons and lasers intended for space emitters are tested. Or perhaps it concerns something fundamentally different. Researchers have spent a multitude of efforts and resources to uncover the significance of Area 51. Confidence that some new technology is being developed there is growing. devices resembling what we call flying saucers are observed above the peaks of Groom Lake. More and more experts in ufology are linking secret projects with the study of extraterrestrial technologies. Sensation remains sensation, however, eyewitnesses have no doubt about the cosmic origin of the flying vehicles that rush over the mountain valley. To confirm their stories, they bring back from Area 51 photographs, films, and videotapes captured in the pages of UFO diaries. Hundreds of UFO hunters regularly head into the desert and wander through the mountains around Area 91, armed with cameras in hopes of capturing a strange flying object. One of the expedition participants managed to film a fragment showing a disc appearing over Groom Lake. This device resembled none of the known flying vehicles. It hovered silently, zigzagging, sharply changing altitude and course, turning in any direction by 75 degrees. Perhaps it was a device that had come to us from other worlds. Workers recount that this device landed here in 1953, and at that time, living extraterrestrials were brought here as well. The Russians photographed Area 51 for many years, and Stalin was concerned. He wanted to know what had happened in Roswell. Ultimately, they concluded that it was not a crashed satellite, but a vehicle of extraterrestrial origin. The Russians did not know where it had come from, but they understood the immense importance of such a finding. Of course, all these discussions have no evidence to support them, but could there be any evidence at all? The workers know about this zone exactly as much as you and I do. Where do the legends about extraterrestrials being studied in Area 51 come from? The people working there may not even be aware of the existence of the object. Recently, a federal court granted their request, and now the workers know the name of their enterprise, but no more than that. If you work at one of the secret bases in Nevada, you are brought in every day from Las Vegas, first by plane, then by bus. The windows are tinted, and you are only able to exit to your work hangar and a few neighboring buildings. It is interesting why the Russians can fly and photograph these objects, of which American taxpayers know nothing. In 1988, a unique photograph of Area 51 was taken from a Russian satellite. It shows a craft at the edge of the runway that seems to be attempting to take off. However, an unusual photograph is not yet proof of the actual existence of extraterrestrial technologies. According to descriptions by Robert Lazar, a gravitational reactor is installed on the disk, which produces a counterwave that opposes Earth's gravity. Special belts are necessary, as there are no overloads during flight. The mysterious crafts over Area 51 may be nothing other than a gift to the United States government from aliens who crashed on our planet. Perhaps interplanetary cooperation is in full swing, and we are completely unaware of it. Robert Lazar's account of his work on an unidentified object that was turnkey delivered by extraterrestrial beings has become one of the most grandiose sensations of the century. Lazar claims that during his time in Area 51 and at the S4 facility, he obtained irrefutable evidence of the existence of other intelligent worlds. In one of his television interviews, he stated that he had access to official documents according to which the technology of the flying saucer came to us from the Zeta star system, located 35 light-years from Earth. Describing the aliens, Lazar speaks of beings with gray skin and large heads, who were just over 1 meter tall and weighed between 12 and 25 kilograms. These extraterrestrials claimed that they have long been visiting Earth and in proof presented photographs that they said were taken 10,000 years ago. The interstellar information and technical exchange continued until 1979, when a sudden conflict occurred and the aliens left Earth. In their haste, the astronauts from ZTST left a mountain of spare parts at the S4 facility, which allowed Earth scientists to assemble their own flying saucer. Testing of the unidentified object then began over Area 51, where the military established a regime of utmost secrecy. According to Lazar, the stringent security measures were entirely justified, as the alien device generated energy that far exceeded the nuclear potential of Earth. The power source of the flying saucer operated on super-powerful pulses obtained by burning antimatter. A weapon functioning on such a principle could destroy all earthly civilization with a single shot. Furthermore, this energy could be used to render the ship invisible. The disc could fly over any tactical position and remain unnoticed, becoming transparent like glass. Norio Hayakawa, confident that extraterrestrial technologies are not intended for the benefit of humanity, warns that if the achievements of the aliens fall into the hands of military industrialists, it will only bring closer the Third World War and the end of the world. In his opinion, Area 51 and Object S4 are far from being the only testing grounds for super-powerful devices in the United States. He points to secret testing sites in Southern California, where at several bases of the United States Air Force, tests of individual components of flying saucers are conducted. Hayakawa notes that there are no ordinary airplanes here, neither in the hangars nor on the runway. Everything is empty. When this base was being built, local residents observed round-the-clock movements of trucks carrying cement, which indicated plans for the creation of a vast underground complex. He shares his experience of communicating with builders of underground facilities in Area 51, who recounted how laboratories and testing sites grew deeper while the same desert remained above. The California bases are guarded as vigilantly as Area 51, and their modest appearance raises suspicions. If underground giants truly exist in Nevada and California, it could mean that they harbor a threat to humanity. Robert Dean, an analyst, expresses his viewpoint. To be honest, it is quite possible that the people abducted on the forehead do not fall on Mars but into a bunker of a secret laboratory. Wars have never been considered a constitution, and a law of human rights and tales of flying saucers become frightening. Could Area 51 be a prison for UFO captives? According to Lazar's account, Object S4 is located in a rock and consists of 9 hangars, the doors of which are carefully camouflaged. Remarkably, but fact, the description matches the accounts of several individuals who claim to have been abducted by UFOs and transported to underground fortifications. These hostages of flying saucers find themselves in dungeons where American military uniforms occasionally flash by. Some believe that alien technologies could serve as a reliable defense for the inhabitants of Earth against the aliens themselves. One of the experts expresses the opinion that the government and the military fear not an earthly adversary, but a cosmic one. He asserts that the greatest danger comes from invasions from other worlds. There is evidence that the government places its own security above all else. According to him, they infiltrate spies into ufologist organizations, publish forgeries in the press, and mock those who claim to have seen UFOs. The authorities, in his view, have worked to create a distorted picture of public opinion, and today everything related to ufology is lost in the abyss of mass disinformation. Photographs obtained from Russian satellites, as well as other authentic images, objectively confirm the existence of a base in Area 51. The dungeons created by the military are astonishing in their scale. Witnesses who have been there report more than 40 floors. For unknown reasons, the military continues to control all approaches to the Groom Lake Valley, and public concern regarding the mystery of Area 51 grows with each passing day. If UFOs are not a fabrication, then the authorities' policy appears quite calculated. They are trying to avoid panic. There is a theory that aliens were accepted at the highest levels somewhere in the 1940s, when mass hysteria surrounded communism and the chaos of world politics. Reports of UFOs would hardly have cooled the atmosphere of those years. All conjectures regarding Area 51 remain mere assumptions, lacking real evidence that we possess alien technologies. How can one be convinced of the existence of intelligent life in other worlds when all paths leading to this are blocked by the military? But if evidence does exist, the question arises, will the world change for the better when we present it on the pages of UFO diaries?